Ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for tuning in to the second episode of the MTGRocks podcast. My name is Alan, and today I have with us the usual crew. We got Niall and Seamus.
Yeah,
What's up, guys? How you guys doing?
all good.
Great, glad to hear. We have some great stuff, great topics to talk about today. Some big things happening in 2022 right off the rip. January, we'll briefly kind of cover the biggest, I think the biggest competitive like play implications of like the stuff that happened with the BNR that got dropped. We'll talk about Kamigawa previews and some of our favorite cards, things that we're excited about. And then also the Q4 2021 financials came out. The financial report for Wizards of the Coast came out yesterday, so we definitely want to touch on that because there is some things in there that are, worth talking about, and some implications around that as well too. So, first thing here, let's crack into just very briefly touching on January. The first things that kind of happened, and I think the big thing was the banner restricted announcement, along with the Alchemy Rebalance of cards. This was kind of the first pass at those cards, as well as again a very just kind of surprise banning of cards that kind of came out, and I believe we can talk quickly about those. So I guess really the big one here I think was the standard bannings of Alrund's Epiphany and Divide by Zero. Pretty impactful.
Faceless Haven.
Oh, and Faceless Haven. Yeah, I mean, it was something that that card kind of slipped my mind because I just haven't seen it all that much recently. So yeah, but Alrund's Epiphany, Faceless Haven, Divide by Zero, all getting banned in standard. So I know, Niall, you play a lot more kind of constructed standard on Arena. How has the format kind of shaken up, and how has it felt with those cards no longer in the format?
Yeah, I mean the announcement wasn't, I don't think, a surprise on Alrund's front. We knew that one was going to be coming. It was too much with kind of, is it already dominating as it was, and it was becoming frustrating and unfun to play against. And I suppose that's kind of I guess Wizards maybe just let it slip for maybe a month or two. Figured, listen, let's just see how Midnight Hunt and Crimson Vow do in terms of balancing things out. Let's see what the lay of the land is as we enter 2022, and if we need to swing the ban hammer, we will. I think they swung it a bit too hard with Divide by Zero. I think there were some good synergies that were possible with Divide by Zero, and they were fair and they were fun. And it was sometimes a challenge to play against. I think realistically, the only thing I can think maybe why it went was purely for its synergy with a card like Leah, because obviously it takes away the ability to counter, but in using Divide by Zero, you can bounce things back to hand, and people can waste mana just trying to get big spells off that way. Obviously, if you've got then Leah, you send it to your graveyard and you can cast it straight away again on the next spell if you have the mana. So that's the only reason I can think that Divide by Zero was taken away. Auron was an obvious one. The Alchemy Rebalance has probably done more for that format. That's understandable, but it needed to go from standard. Faceless Haven is one that I'm still on the fence about. I really enjoy using things like Hall of Storm Giants, Cave of Frost Giants, Den of Bugbear, and Tyrant. Those kind of active lands that you can turn into creatures. So maybe Faceless Haven. I mean, for me, I didn't think it was a problem again. Maybe they swung the ban hammer too hard with the other lands that are out there, or maybe it was just a case of, listen, there's already so many options out there with these specific mana colored lands. Let's just take Faceless Haven off the table. I was running it in my mono white aggro. I don't really see the difference too much. I wasn't really activating it that much anyway. So again, between Divide by Zero and Faceless Haven, I'm a bit confused, but fine. They have their reason. Alrund is definitely, it's changed the landscape of kind of standard. Is It Turns was obviously dominating. People really did try in the days leading up to the card going to come up with some new synergies and some new decks to keep Is It going, but beyond maybe the Dragons deck, that's out there at the minute, which wasn't nearly as impactful. It's just completely gone off the face of the earth, and now standard is just this wide open landscape again, where there's so many decks out there. Clerics is probably one of, if not the best out there at the minute, just from the way that thing can pop off. It's a little bit weak to a board clear, I get that, but we've started seeing new things coming up, like this Rakdos Blood deck, which is heavily built around Valky and the Tibalt double face card. Like, that's a lot of fun to play with. We're seeing blood tokens actually slowly in general just come into the game a little bit more in standard play. Dungeons have come back, which is the most random thing. They've started being played again
Weird.
in some white variations. I think some Boros decks and some Orzhov decks are using dungeons again, which it's been nice to see. It's nice to see all these mechanics just suddenly come back because of what, 3 cards getting banned. It's strange, but people are getting more creative. There is no one identifiable deck where you can go, that's broken, everyone's going to start playing it. But there's definitely a few top tier decks out there. Mono white's still up there, mono green's still up there. Black is kind of knocking on the door, maybe not quite top tier yet. And Orzhov again is definitely up there. But yeah, the game has changed for the better, I think. Even though, like I say, 2 of the bans I don't quite get, but Auron being gone is massive, and it's the game is better for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately, right? Like while it may seem confusing for the Divide by Zero and Faceless Haven bans, right? Like, you can kind of expect, like, it makes sense when you look at the context of how the format's shaped up, like you're saying, right? Like, there is a big, diverse, open field, and my expectation is that at least if Divide by Zero continued to remain in the format, there might not be quite as much like out there creativity. It feels like blue is still kind of in a power position. And then at the same time, like you also said, mono green, mono white, still kind of the, pushing up the top, leading the pack in terms of, of power in standard, where if you have Faceless Haven, I think that the big difference between Faceless Haven and something like Cave of the Frost Dragon, is the mana cost, the activation cost, right? It's a 4/3 for 3 mana essentially. That's that's very protected against, general sorcery speed creature removal. It's really good against control, and it's generally just good everywhere else. Like, as someone who also played a lot of mono white, it's just an insanely good card, just in
And
general.
it always comes into play untapped.
Right. It also always all comes into play untapped. Like, you never have, there's no downside to that card. And I do think that there's a very fine line between the alchemy version of Faceless Haven and the historic or the standard version of Faceless Haven. Alchemy doesn't even really see Faceless Haven played at all. So, like, even that 1 power differential is enough to kind of like shift things, and I think that was enough for Wizards to say, okay, if Aldrin's Epiphany and control decks are kind of pushing, the back burner because of these 2 cards leaving, and if we leave Faceless Haven, and aggro decks are going to just continue to run the format, and they are still a big player, but they're definitely just kind of brought down. They no longer had potential to be tier 0. They're still tier 1. They're not tier 0, or tier 0.5 or whatever you want to call it, right? So, very, very cool. I have not touched standard, truthfully. I'm not, and I do enjoy standard. Maybe I'll give it a run when Kamigawa comes out, but standard, for me, I truthfully was surprised to see this banning, especially because Kamigawa and Dynasty is right around the corner, and historically, Wizards has pushed off BNR announcements when new sets are approaching, especially with rotations, but also with like new sets. They wait to see how does this set shake the format up. And honestly, I think that they understood that maybe some of the cards that were in Kamigawa and Dynasty weren't going to solve the problem. They didn't specifically print anything to target hate the turns decks or anything of that sort, right? So, like, maybe that's the reason they just pulled the trigger on it and just said, yeah, let's just do it now. Let's set standard in a healthy place and inject Kamigawa and Dynasty into a much healthier standard where there is creativity and diversity in the format, and really let these new cards have a place to shine, right? And not get overshadowed by Alrund's Epiphany and stuff, right? So,
Didn't they kind of like procrastinate on Alrund's Epiphany going into Crimson Vow? Like, they said, like, we're keeping an eye on this, but we want to see how Crimson Vow.
yeah, and that's
Yeah.
exactly it, right? Exactly it. They've done it in the past. They've done it with other cards. I think they did it like I feel like I remember like with like Uro or something, like something in that like Eldraine kind of era. They kind of held onto for a little bit too long and waited to see how different sets would impact things. But I think a lot of things have changed in how Wizards is handling like BNRs and things like that. Like, hopefully this is the only set of cards that need to go in the next standard iteration, but we'll have to see.
I don't think they could be like, oh, we want to see how, like, if they just keep doing that, where they're like, let's wait for the next set on Alrund's Epiphany to see if it's okay and adjust into the meta. I don't think they could do that again. I think the community would just like blow back at them, like,
yeah,
when are you gonna ban it?
And partially too, like there were times when the turns decks were kind of kept at bay for a little while, like towards like at the very beginning of like Crimson Vow or something like that, like the cards they push off somehow for some reason seem to kind of drop in popularity ever so slightly, and then as the format kind of starts to solidify and mature, people just realize that this deck was still busted and they just play it again and it's still just as good, right? So like that's really kind of the thing, and I don't think that their Wizards was willing to take that risk this time.
Did what is it called? Alchemist Gambit, the cleave extra turn spell. I know when that card was like shown off in like the spoilers, people were like, oh, if Alrund's does go, maybe this can replace it. Had that happened at all?
No.
No? Oh, okay.
The deck is the archetype is dead. Is it turns is just dead. It's gone.
Yeah, I think the Lier divide by zero kind of thing was also really, really, really good. Was a really big part of some of those lists, and if you don't have access to those kinds of things like divide by zero, I'm gonna go on a small soapbox here about divide by zero. I had some friends who were upset that divide by zero got banned, and they were like, oh, how could a bounce spell, a 4-mana bounce spell or whatever, be the problem in standard? But it's not just a bounce spell, right? A normal bounce spell bounces permanents, like things that are already in play. Divide by zero basically bounce things on the stack, and there's very few cards that actually have that capability to bounce things on the stack. Like for what was it, Venser, Shaper Savant, Shaper Savant can do that, but like the very, very few effects can actually interact with the stack in that way, and so that's incredibly powerful. But then also the learn, being able to generate a free card off of learn, was incredibly powerful as well. So it was just an overly flexible, overly versatile card. It's not, you can't just relegate it to a simple bounce spell. If it just said return a permanent from the battlefield to its owner's hand, learn, it probably wouldn't be played at all. It would just be whatever chaff uncommon bounce spell. But the fact that it can interact with the stack as a pseudo counter spell, not put the card in the graveyard for dealing, for specific graveyard synergies, and the fact that it was also instant speed, it could be utilized with Lier, just all of those things, it was way, way, way powerful. And it made a lot of sense in my mind that it would go. I was definitely shocked. I was definitely surprised to see it go, but in my mind it made sense, just because playing with that card felt like you could never lose the game. It was ridiculous.
I don't think they would have banned it if Lier didn't exist, though.
Yeah, sure.
I could find before Lier was around.
Yeah, I could see that. I think Lier was definitely exacerbated the problem quite a bit. So
I see that they changed Lier and Alchemy too. So I kind of feel like and they changed Divide by Zero and Alchemy. So I kind of feel like the Divide by Zero ban in Standard was kind of their way of trying to just nerf Lier a little bit. Like that's the only reason they.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was also a very, very, very hard card to play around at times. Sometimes the control decks just run you out of cards and you have nothing to do, and you can't stick a spell, and it feels bad.
Yeah, especially Divide by Zero plus Hullbreaker is just.
Yeah, you were just kind of in a bad way. So. Other things that got banned, Ragavan got banned in Legacy. I think this is one that I don't play a ton of Legacy, but I think I've seen a lot of Legacy players on Twitter kind of talk about this one a little bit. I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think Wizards' reasoning behind it makes a lot of sense when you can play this powerful mana advantage 1-drop, card advantage 1-drop, and have Force of Will, Force of Negation, Daze, Lightning Bolt, all of these like very cheap, interactive, powerful spells to kind of back it up. You kind of snowball the game very quickly, right? If you can force of will, your opponent's turn 1 removal spell. Okay, well now they're time walked and you've just gained so much advantage on them in Legacy, where games typically are won and lost in sometimes in the first few turns of the match, right? So it is very interesting to see that one go. It made a lot of sense. And then historic got good.
I think Delver with Ragavan was something like almost 20% of the meta.
It was yeah, it had a really high non-mirror match win rate percentage. Like it was like almost 60%. Which is really, really, really bad. Like it's really good, but it's like bad for the format, right? So like, yeah, when you have something that's that, and then like when you combo that with like the Murktide Regents and the, and Delver, like you said, and like, yeah, you just have a recipe to just run a format over with that, and it's kind of curious that Ragavan hasn't seen a modern ban yet, but I don't think it's quite nearly as a problem.
There's no just free counter spells.
Yeah, there's no force of will. Like you only have force negation. It's only 4 off, and that's really it, right? So it's not as big.
It's interesting that that's the second Modern Horizons card that's been banned in Legacy now, because there was Ren 6 banned, and now Ragavan. It's just like they keep printing things directly to Modern, and they seem to be just breaking Legacy, but not so much Modern. Like they designed it pretty well for Modern, but then they just Legacy is almost like a what do you call it, forethought, or like.
Yeah, I mean design has changed quite a bit since the days of like printing Legacy, era cards. So like it's when you combo that with the powerful design of what we have now, and like especially in Modern Horizons, it's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
The last card here on the well, I guess the last 2 cards on the mentions list. Memory Lapse got finally banned. It was suspended in Historic, so it's now finally banned, which is great. And the one thing that kind of blew my mind absolutely, and I never saw this coming in a million years, was that 3 Fairy got banned or unbanned, rebalanced and unbanned in Historic, becoming now another 4 Fairy. So Teferi Time Raveler got rebalanced, unbanned in Historic. He is now much more balanced, still in the spirit of the card. Never saw it. No, didn't see that coming in a million years. But I will say for that, I'm okay with it, honestly. So he went up to 4 mana. He gained 1 loyalty. And then his passive is your opponents can only cast spells on their turn. So they can't cast spells on your turn. So they can still cast spells at instant speed on their turn, but not on your turn. So it's kind of it's no longer this like powerful main deck beats everything kind of, hose your opponent, slow the game down kind of card like you would see, for example, in Modern. It is now a anti-control sideboard tech card, like control hoser. And I thought that it would probably, it definitely feels like it's a, let's put this in the sideboard, and it definitely was. I've played a few Historic events over the past couple of weeks, and yeah, Teferi did come to play, was in sideboards. Didn't make quite as big of a splash as I was initially expecting he was going to, but he was there. He was good when he was around. And just he's back. He's back.
So this is one alchemy change I wish could be changed in paper to a degree. Like, at least as far as Modern goes, I feel like it could stay maybe at 3 mana, but I just want that static ability to change the way they did in Alchemy, because it's so frustrating not being able to. Like, I like how it works as an effective silence to try to like push your combos through, but it also blocks so many like weird cards. Like, for example, they said in their ban announcement how it blocks something like Finale of Promise, the red one, where it's like, it
you can't put spells on the stack, cast them. It would be nice to kind of see how that would work. But if like that could be something that we could play with in like another format, it'd be kind of interesting. But it is right now just for Historic. I'm happy that it's back. The format in Historic is healthy. I'll say with even with his return. So very, very cool choice there. And I anticipate that we're going to see probably some more cards that were on the historic ban list come off the ban list and get rebalanced. So yeah, I maybe there's a world where we have a rebalanced Oko. Maybe there's a world where we have a rebalanced Nexus of Fate or Wilderness Reclamation, which I don't really want to see that particularly. There are we did see it with Omnath already, the four color Omnath already for Alchemy's rebalancing. So like it's an interesting thought to see that maybe some of these cards can come back.
Is the new Omnath playable?
No.
Okay, I didn't think so. It looked pretty bad.
It's not. I mean, here's the thing, right? I think that honestly, like the new the rebalanced Omnath probably is somewhat playable, but I think that it just turns into kind of this like average ramp deck that it's nothing spectacular. It's not doing anything crazy or out there. I think the draw card getting removed and changed to Scry and the additional mana cost really kind of sets it off, because getting to 4 mana is oftentimes a little easier than getting to 5 mana through your ramp strategy. So it just kind of feels a little bit like slow, I guess, in the grand scheme of things. So cool, really fast. I mean, Alchemy Rebalance, I don't think much changed on that front. I think the Dragons deck got worse. That's about it. Nothing crazy. They buffed up a bunch of adventure cards. Whoop-de-doo. They nerfed Lier. They nerfed Divide by Zero, Fearsome Well, Town Razor, Tyrant. They nerfed a bunch of cards that were performing well. And I don't. The Dragons deck just got worse. That's basically about it. So nothing too major there. I guess any last thoughts? Anything happened in the last month you guys want to briefly touch upon that comes to mind?
You and I had a side conversation at one point about the suspensions in historic, and so my kind of theory moving forward is suspensions have always felt kind of like this like lackluster, like it didn't. Like they're removing it, and we kind of all know that they're gonna remove it permanently eventually. So why are we suspending? And there's all the whole debacle with the wild cards, and that like when they suspend something, you don't get your wild cards back. But then they eventually it always seemed kind of like this like useless move. But I kind of feel like there could be a purpose to suspensions now, in that like, because they're now reworking cards within Historic and Alchemy, they could use a suspension to effectively, like, we want to remove this card so that we can have time to rework it and test it before we reintroduce it back in.
Yeah.
So I feel like there is a reason to suspensions now. So
I agree. I think that it is basically that. I mean, they have 3 months worth of time. Basically, cards stay on suspension for 3 months, and then if the format looks good, then they generally will ban them. But I think that it's a good way to either one, see if it's healthy without the card in the format, and then either try rebalance passes internally and see if it makes sense. Otherwise, they can just ban it, right? So yeah, there definitely feels like a little bit more purpose. So yeah, very cool. Let's move on to Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. So we have the whole preview segment here. All the previews are out. All the commander deck previews are out. A lot of cool cards, tons of cool cards in this set. I think for me, one of my favorite sets that was just printed in a very, very long time, and not just because I am Asian American and this set speaks to me a lot more than any of the other sets do. Just for me, thematically, aesthetically, even in a way sometimes mechanically, the set to me feels really, really good, and I'm very, very excited for it. So what we wanted to do was kind of go through a couple of our favorite cards that we're kind of excited for coming out of the set, and kind of just chat about them briefly, kind of what we intend to do with them when set launch happens, and go from there. So, Seamus, why don't you go ahead and kick us off? Go give me one of your favorites.
I mean, I'm already building 2 Kamigawa commander decks before the card. I even have the cards. Light Paws, the Emperor's Voice, the Aura commander. It can, whenever you cast an Aura spell, you can tutor an Aura from your library with converter mana cost equal to or lesser than that Aura, and put it onto the battlefield attached to Light Paws. So it kind of feels like this, like, yeah, it's just this cool tutor package, and I didn't have an Aura deck so far. So really, really excited about that one. And then I'm building Ishin along with Alan. That card seems great, but I'll let you talk about that one a bit.
Cool. Now what about you? What's like kind of your top favorite card you're excited about right now?
It was difficult. I think this set, for what it's worth, on the common and uncommon value scale, is just ridiculous. Looking at rares and mythics, I'm not nearly as fussed about half of those cards. If I'm perfectly honest, the common and uncommons is where my attention is. So when I was looking at maybe something that I can incorporate straight into one of my mono black decks, I was looking at the enchantment. What are they called? Enchantment Saga creatures or whatever. The Long Reach of Night, which is also then flips into Animus of Night's Reach. So it's an uncommon. Turn 1 and or also say activation 1 and 2. Each opponent sacrifices a creature if they can't discard a card, or unless they discard a card. So I'm guessing that will be down to choice when it comes to ruling. So they can either discard or sack a creature. Turn 3, you flip it, and then it's a 0. An 0/4 with Menace that then has the activation of plus X when it attacks, which the X is then the number of creatures in the player who you're attacking's graveyard. So late game, this is absolutely massive. If board wipes have been used, plus if they've sacrificed 2 creatures for turn 1 and 2 on the saga, you could be looking at a plus 6, 7, or 8 with Menace, and you're swinging in for huge attacks even early in the game. Again, just if you're playing against something like an aggro deck, like a mono white, where they're not too bothered about the creatures that they maybe keep on the battlefield to begin with, even swinging in as a Menace with 2 or 3 power is still going to be pretty decent. Not much as a defender, obviously, because it won't gain off that. It only gains off attack. But I just thought something that can really bolster mono black the way it is at the minute, both on a control front and even on an aggro front, could be really interesting to see how it plays in, and as an uncommon as well. It's really interesting to see how it works and what people do with it.
Yeah, the uncommon. I think I was saying this. Yeah, I think Seamus and I were saying this the other day. The uncommon slot in this set looks really good. There's a lot of really good commons, uncommons. Draft is going to be an absolute blast with this format, I imagine. So cool. Yeah. So as Seamus alluded to earlier, I am also building Ishin 2 Heavens as 1, and he is a 3 mana 3/4. So red, white, and black. And then if an attacking creature causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. So it is like Panharmonicon for attacking triggers. And there was a lot of ways you could kind of go around this one. And I think the way that we kind of landed on with the deck was kind of a curse goad package, along with some very powerful attack triggers. So cursing our opponents with things like Curse of Opulence, Curse of Shallow Grave, to incentivize people to attack our opponents. And his ability, Ishin's ability, is any attack trigger. It doesn't have to be your creatures. It can be anybody's creatures. So there can be a double-edged sword to that, but essentially you're hopefully giving yourself enough politic power here at the table to incentivize people to not attack you, or not send any of their negative effects at you. And then also goading kind of just pushes that a bit more, where it basically says that your opponent's creatures have to attack other people. They can't attack you, which is really, really good. And then I found a good number of just really powerful very strong attack triggers to go along with that. So there is one, I forget what the name of the card was, but there is one that's like when it attacks, if it's unblocked, you can reanimate the top card of the defending player's graveyard, and so you will get 2 cards off of that. There's one that's when it attacks, it deals damage. It deals a damage equal to the number of cards in the defending player's graveyard. So if there is a graveyard centric deck or anything of that sort, when you double up on that trigger, you could very easily like dome someone for 30 damage just off of that attack trigger. And then also we have obviously, and then we have some like cool uses of cards that you typically don't see as much anymore. So like Reconnaissance, for 0 you can, it's an enchantment, and for 0 you can remove an attacking creature you control from combat and untap it. So we just attack with a team, pay 0 and untap all of our creatures, remove from combat after we've gotten our triggers, and we're safe for defense purposes too. So like a lot of cool cards. Super excited about that one. I can't wait. It's coming next week or the week. I think the week after, because I'm ordering everything online, so it should be coming once the paper set drops. So I'm very excited about that.
For mine, I'm playing a slight night package.
Okay.
With some equipment. So Blade of Cells.
Yeah.
Is... oh,
yeah, Blade of Cells. So that was a card that I was really considering. I wanted to put in this deck, and it will go in this deck because Myriad is an attack trigger. So you double up on your attack triggers for Myriad. So Myriad, for anybody who doesn't know, is that it is if a creature has Myriad, when you attack with it, you create a copy of that creature attacking each other opponent. So their Blade of Cells is an equipment that has that gives the creature that it's equipped to Myriad. So when you double up on that trigger, you have 2 copies of each creature attacking each of your opponents, which is broken. Absolutely broken. And then when you combo that with something like the reanimation or the deal damage one, it won't trigger unless if it isn't blocked, it won't trigger. So it's an attacker, and then if it becomes unblocked, or if it's not blocked when it goes through, you get double up on those triggers as well. So now you have, you can kill the entire board with that kind of combo. It's kind of insane. So yeah, that's definitely a
reanimate like 14 things or something of that point.
You'd reanimate 2 for each player. 2 for
plus
each.
The original copy is.
Oh yeah, because you get 2, so you get 3 for each player. So you get 9 total creatures. Or no,
yeah,
it's not. It's 3 for each player. 6. You get. Am I mathing correctly?
Well, plus the original, which is doubled.
Oh yeah, 14. 14. Yeah, so you have 14 reanimated creatures. I like it. I'm about it. Cool. What else? What else you got, Seamus? What's another card that's not Light Position that you're kind of just big thumbs up on?
So many of these cards are just fantastic for Commander. Like, I want to build Hinata Dawn Crowned a little bit. Spells you cast cost 1 less to cast for each target, and spells your opponents cast cost 1 more to cast for each target. So it's kind of like I kind of hate the idea of Grand Augustine, where it's just like presence, it just taxes everything. This one has some like cool gimmicks where it can, like, if you play swine turn into swine or something, is the
Curse of Swine.
Curse of Swine, yeah. It's like 2 mana, turn everything on the field into a 2/2. And there's so many of those like X spells that can target a bunch of different things, and there's mechanics like Strive, that can, it's kind of like a kicker, but it targets multiple things, and at which point you can just target your whole field. So that card seems like a really, really cool commander. I'm also pretty psyched because I started picking up some Yuriko stuff in anticipation of Kamigawa, and the ninjas in this set are awesome. They're so cool. Thousand Faith Shadow in particular is just like everything I want for my deck. And the new Nashi Moon Sage Scion, the mythic ninjutsu, that card's pretty sweet too.
Yep, Ninja's going to be sweet in this set for sure. Expect if you didn't like rogues in standard before, you're gonna hate ninjas now. So yeah. Now what else you got? What else anything else that's kind of poking at you, like I want to build something here, or even just
Yeah,
thematically or fun cards you like.
yeah. So I was really hoping when I first read it that Banishing Slash was worded slightly different. So that's the white. So you destroy a target artifact or enchantment or tapped creature, and then if you control an enchantment and an artifact, you create a samurai with 2/2 vigilance. Now, if that was artifact or enchantment, that card is way better.
Bonkers.
But when I first read it, I was like, oh, you have to control an artifact and an enchantment. And playing mono white aggro, very unlikely that you're going to have both. Again, you're looking to end games in turn 3 or 4. So I was kind of looking elsewhere within white, as in something to improve or something that's really going to start playing into the white builds, and went with Lion Sash instead. So it's a 1+Y. You can exile target card from a graveyard for 1 white mana, and that puts a +1/+1 on Lion Sash. You can reconfigure it for 2, attach it to something else. Equip creature gets 1+1/+1 for each +1/+1 counter on Lion Sash. So if you get it down and you can protect it a little bit, it could do great things. And also with that ability to exile a card from a graveyard, you kind of then play into any deck that's looking to pull from its graveyard. Things like Blood on the Snow become a lot less effective if you're basically getting rid of every card worthwhile in their graveyard. It becomes nothing more than a really expensive board clear. So I think there's a few ways that that's going to play into mono white, and I expect it to come in as soon as Kamigawa lands and play a pretty big role in the archetype going forward.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, the thing with standard mono white, so it's not as necessarily the case in other formats, but particularly in standard, mono white doesn't really have a great way to deal with graveyards, and I think Lion Sash, I mean, it's scavenging ooze on a white artifact, right? Like it's really good. It's going to be insanely good.
Formats too.
What's up?
Across formats too.
Oh
That
yeah,
card's
even across
Yeah.
formats, it's going to be good. Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, in decks that don't necessarily want to just jam Rest in Peace, like sure, yeah, it's gonna be
But you could
very
like tutor for it with Stoneforge Mystic
also
or
true.
open the armory and Commander.
Also true.
Like there's a ton of just synergies because it's an equipment, which Scavenging News is not. So it opens up a whole new like channel of ways to play Scavenging News, but in white.
Yeah, and I love Scavenging News, so it's great to see
Yeah.
that this kind of effect is going elsewhere. So very cool. And then I guess for me, a couple of other things that I have that are kind of highlights for me. Jin Gitaxias for one is an amazing card from my perspective. I grew up in a Magic age as a player, kind of during the Scars of Mirrodin, New Phyrexia era. That's when I was really starting to get into like competitive Magic and things like that. So for me, the Phyrexians and the Praetors have kind of a soft spot in my heart, and always will. And so I'm very excited to see. And when Voraclex came back, I was big hype. I played Sultai Ultimatum to the death. It was fantastic. It was one of my favorite decks in that standard format. So I'm excited for Jin Gitaxias. I'm very, very hyped to see what that is going to do for maybe some of these like control decks, or if there's like some crazy combo deck shenanigans that you can do with some things with them. I'm sure somebody will figure something out there. The other one that was kind of I'm also excited for is the new Kiki Jiki, quote unquote. The Fable of the Mirror Breaker, I think, is the front side saga. And basically it makes a pirate. Oh yeah, so first chapter 1 is it makes a goblin shaman with when it attacks, you make a treasure token. Chapter 2 is when you may discard up to 2 cards, and if you do draw that many cards, so cool, like nice looting effect. And then when it flips over, it is basically Kiki Jiki, Mirror Breaker, but it costs 1 mana. It also doesn't have haste. So the puzzle in my brain, and I wrote an article about this. So if you if this sounds interesting to you, go check that article out. There is a combo in Historic that we can do with Panharmonicon, Kiki Jiki, Corridor Monitor, and any Mana Rock. Or since I guess we also have the artifact basic lands, we can use those as well. Or we can go infinite. There is a few other ways to kind of navigate this combo in green as well, but I think that going the more like control, is it like full blown combo route is the way I'm gonna try for it. But there is a combo here. I'm pretty excited to try it out and see, and it's gonna be you know, I'm gonna put out maybe a video or something on that. So definitely stay tuned and sub to the channel for that video. So that'll be fun. So I'm super pumped about this set. I'm very excited. It comes out tomorrow on Magic Arena. So anybody, guys, now is your last chance to go pre-order it. If you're interested in pre-ordering it on Arena, today's the last day to do that. But very excited. A lot of content to come for Kamagawa Neon Dynasty in the next few weeks for sure. So definitely stay tuned. Cool. Any final thoughts? I guess commander decks. We can kind of briefly touch on the commander decks because there are some awesome cards in the commander. I guess not just in the decks themselves, but also Wizards are doing a cycle of cards in the collector boosters that are commander legality essentially. So you know, legacy, vintage, and commander legal only cards. And I think the big one that kind of stands out right off the bat is the 5-color Shrines commander. Ghost Shintai of Life's Origin, I believe is the name is what it's called. Yeah. So we were saying throughout the entirety of previous season they better print a 5-color commander for Shrines, and they did, and I'm excited about it, and it's $50 already pre-ordering. And I'm sad about that because I really wanted to build Shrines or 5-color like enchantment Shrines as like a commander deck.
And the rest of the shrines are going up in price too now because everybody's excited.
Yeah, I mean it's sweet. It's a very cool archetype and one that will I honestly think maybe has a shot. Maybe in Pioneer maybe has a shot. Historic definitely has a shot since we have the full Honden cycle. We have the Hondens, the Sanctums, and now the Goshintai cycle across the board, and generally speaking, so that should be exciting. Oh, good.
It would be kind of nice if the commander of Life's Origin, the 5-color commander, was legal for Pioneer in that case, because it is really strong for the archetype. It makes shrine tokens. It powers up all of your other shrines. Yeah.
Yeah, but in that case, like, I don't know. Is there a world where I want to be playing 5-color shrine in Pioneer? Maybe. I don't know. But then the other 2 commander decks, the blue-white vehicles, Buckle Up one. We just published an upgrade article for that. Very cool. I think thematically is awesome, and I think makes vehicles a real. It's gonna be a real archetype. It's gonna be a really fun archetype to play, and a real archetype in Commander. So big thumbs up on that. There's some really cool new cards that are printed in that deck. And then the upgrades one, was weird. Seamus, you wrote the upgrade article on that, so touch on that for me.
It's just the weird part about it is its color combination. Like auras is typically or primarily aligned with the white color identity, and equipment is like white green. And then Wizards decided to make it green red this time around, and it doesn't have as much like support as it could if it were in its primary colors. But I did some interesting things. Like I found some really old auras, the Whip Silk, and there's there's one for every color. There's a red one, Crown of Fire or something like that. They're 1 mana. They have like an ability where it's the green one. It can block creatures that have flying, and the red one has fire breathing. But they also have an ability to return themselves to their hand for 1 mana. So you can just keep replaying them and gaining a bunch of different tokens, or you can like return it and modify another creature that needs to be modified. So there's lots of interesting things you can do with the Commander Chichiro, the Shattered Blade. It is just a very strange color combination, though.
Yeah. Yeah. And you and I were looking over kind of the list and kind of trying to work to try to prep your article a little bit. Yeah, there was a couple of different directions you could go, but none of them really felt like really good. They never felt like, Oh, they weren't exciting. They just kind of were like, I guess you could do that.
I think the best part about it is like using auras that you're not like attaching your auras to your creatures, because Chishiro triggers off of any aura played. So things like Utopia Sprawl and Wild Growth, they can ramp you to your Chishiro on turn 4 early, or if you already have it down, they're not like dead draws later on. They still make tokens, and so like just playing as many of those as you can, and playing like cool removal spells like Dryad, or what is it called?
Song of the Dryad.
Song of the Dryad and Kenrith's Transformation.
Yeah.
Can like they're effective removal spells, which trap your opponent's commanders on the field. They can't go back to the command zone, and it makes tokens for you. So yeah, there are some really cool things you can do with that commander though.
Yeah, for sure. Niall, any thoughts on the commander cards? Oh, you're muted. No,
we can't hear you, man.
Oh, okay, he'll be back.
He'll be back. Yeah, there we go.
That might be better.
Yeah, there you go. Now we can hear you.
Now we can hear you. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, Buckle Up is easily my preferred one. You know, if we're going to be getting sneaky products from Wizards of the Coast, I've seen some of the kind of influencers getting their packs already, and you are getting a commander deck in there. If I open mine and it's Upgrades Unleashed, I'm going to be very disappointed. I think the reprint value was quite interesting. It was very, very low on Buckle Up, if I remember rightly, like the lowest since, well, certainly the lowest in this current kind of season, if not
lowest ever.
Lowest ever. There you go then. Wow.
$54.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you're buying Commander Precons for that kind of value, though, I suppose you may be doing things wrong. You know, stick to your pulls from your boosters and things like that if you're looking to enter the value game, or just buy the cards from their original printing, I guess. But it was just an interesting point that the kind of people were really harking on, and I was kind of like, really, is that what you're looking for in a Commander Precon, to have this amazing value at this product that usually sticks around 30 to 40 pounds, around the same dollars, I'm guessing? You know, either way, just for what they are pretty amazing value, considering they can get you going with a very competitive deck, all inside one box. You've got everything you need. So yeah, I got sent both of the Crimson Vow ones, and one from Midnight Hunt. I'm just looking for an excuse to start using them now. And I'll keep an eye on the ones in Kamigawa, because again, the set in general is looking to be pretty crazy, and there seems to be a real focus on Commander with it as well, especially compared to some of the recent sets.
Yeah, and I will say, to the point of like kind of the reprint value stuff, and I think that, you know, Command Zone definitely nailed it with this one. There are 30 basic lands in that deck. That's a lot of basic lands, even for a 2-color deck. That's a lot of basic lands. Usually, like, you're probably in a 2-color deck, maybe you're looking at like 22, 23 basic lands. So there's still some cards that they could have thrown in there that they're not even super crazy. I think that, like, what is it? I think like Hollowed Fountain is like $8, $10.
Yeah.
Sea of Clouds, like $8, $10, something like that. Even like Adakar Waste, like there's a bunch of there are a bunch of lands they could have just put in there that aren't super expensive, that would have just made the perceived value feel a little bit better, while also just making the deck a little bit better, right? Diversifying that a little bit more. So it's, you know, it is what it is, but, you know, like you said, no, yeah, the deck is still sweet. It still looks really, really good. Looks very competitive, and it really, for me, like when I'm looking at a Commander Precon, I almost bought that one actually. I'm looking for a deck that's just going to let me play off like out of the box and hold my own, have a good game, have fun. I have some meaningful upgrade paths for the deck, and to kind of, you know, really flush it out and you know, mature the strategy a bit. And I think that these kind of nail that. I think these kind of do exactly that. So very, very cool.
The thing with the upgrades though is, like, if I have to upgrade this deck because there's not enough, like, you know, because there's 30 lands in it, for example, if I have to upgrade it, that means that the pre-constructed deck, I'm just getting useless cards that you know, they're basically going in the garbage or being sold back as bulk anyway. So I might as well pick up the few, and at some points you like upgrade it until it's like you replaced 80% of the original deck. And at that point, it's just like, buy the singles from that deck because they're cheaper. Like buy the face commander or whatever, and just like substitute all of the better spells because Wizards of the Coast decided not to put the good ones in there.
Yeah,
I think that is the route for experienced players, but at their core, precons like this are still for someone to pick up who maybe has a couple of friends that play. They're being pressured into playing, and they can do it and be competitive with that deck. Still, they're not going to moan about that kind of thing, and people will still find it easily upgradable. But I think just in the long term, we're probably not the kind of core audience for those products.
But there's a easy way to fix that. They just put in, like, Command Zone said it in their thing when they were revealing the product. You just put in one value card, like one $30 card. Voila, everybody wants the product now. Versus now it's like, okay, well, you just segregated or sectioned off all the experienced players. They're gonna want to not buy it.
So I think there is something to be said about that, though, because if you think about like the cards that we've seen that are, if they were, example, Dockside Extortionist. I'll just use that as reference. Dockside Extortionist is a commander only card, and sure, it's not a $30 card, but when you put a chase card like that into a commander product, you run the risk of price gouging and supply issues, especially in a time right now where supply and supply chain issues exist in the world. Production issues exist, especially with Wizards. They have had some of these issues. I think it maybe makes a bit of sense to play it a little bit safer here, and just make the decks functional and feel competitive, but not like crazily high value, so that people aren't rushing to the stores to buy them all, and then kind of your casual commander players, your newer players, can't get a hold of them because people have bought them all up for that chase card that's in the now newly reprinted and accessible chase card that's in that set, right? So but I will say for my upgrade article, when I was going through looking at the Buckle Up deck, I was looking at EDA track for just different cards that could go in vehicles decks. Wizards actually kind of nailed this deck. They knocked it out of the park, and they hit a lot of the cards that I would have said, yeah, this is 100% card needs to go in. All the vehicles that they had chosen, for the most part, made a lot of sense. Like, they put Smuggler's Copter, they put Sky Sovereign. I don't think they put Aether Harvester, but you're not really playing a ton of Planeswalkers in that deck. You're playing, they comes with one, and maybe you're putting one or two others in there, so you're not really getting tons of value out of that. But like, they nailed it with the card selection for the most part. It's just that they didn't, give us the juice, if you will, right? They didn't throw, your crazily expensive. They didn't throw Academy Ruins or something like in the Buckle Up deck, kind of a thing, right? So
I think the best commander deck in recent times though was the Bant one from Adventures in Forgotten Realms, where it doesn't have like, they don't have to throw in an $80 card like Dockside Extortionist, or I think it's like 60 or something like that maybe. But that deck from AFR, it just has a bunch of $8 cards. Like it has a lot of value, and so the only reason that this one just feels so bad is that like we see what all the other decks, the average reprint value is like. There's like, it's generally around like $80, and so $50 is just really, really low.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm sure that there were a bunch of reasons for that decision, but we'll never know exactly what those are. But ultimately, very excited about this product, and Kamigawa as a whole. Wizards nailed it, I think, with this one on a big way. Speaking of Kamagawa, and now I'll kind of let you kind of speak to this one a bit. So if you guys have seen some of our articles on our Facebook page that we post, or on the website, and also there was a video that we had posted, we are affiliates now, or we're working with Pinfinity AR. So they are a fantastic, really cool company, really cool product. So Niall, why don't you go ahead and talk about Pinfinity?
Yeah, so one thing that we've been taking a look at is some of the offerings they have on their Pinfinity Plus subscription. These sets are only available as part of the subscription. Once they're released, they go into the vault. You can only access them if you are a Pinfinity Plus member. And the upcoming set that will be released, the last date to purchase a subscription for this one is the 14th of February. It will be shipped on the 15th, is the Champions of Kawagawa set. So inside, quickly open it up. You've got this amazing Hero Izawa art card. So this is AR compatible with the Pinfinity app. You just download that and it has some really cool living animations. And I won't take each pin out, but you can kind of see there. In there, you've got the Kiki-Jiki pin, the Azusa Lost But Seeking, and the is it Divining Top? Well, God, what's the exact card name? Yeah, Sensei's Divining Top. Yeah, and all of those are AR compatible with the app. You can download some cool wallpapers, you get some cool music. It's one of those products that these guys aren't making it off their own back. They are partnered with Wizards of the Coast. This is officially licensed products. Comes in a really cool, as you see, collector's packaging like that, with the name of the set, the Champions of Kawagawa, on the spine there, so you can display them. And we just kind of felt like, what our beliefs about MTG and the wider product scape really lined up. So we decided to kind of partner with them, and you can get 20% off everything on their store. They do a lot more than just MTG stuff. They do D&D as part of that collaboration with Wizards of the Coast. They've also done things like Mass Effect. They've done Stranger Things, so TV, gaming, pop culture in general. They do some awesome products. It's all patented as well, so you won't find this technology anywhere else. And the code MTGRocks gets you that 20% off, including on your first subscription payment as well, if you wanted to sign up to Pinfinity Plus.
Yeah, and speaking of, I guess I'll say like the quality of these pins are incredible. They're like a really thick, like metal or enamel kind of material. They look really, really nice. The detail and the colors really pop on them. The AR functionality is super awesome as well. Definitely check these out. Check our video out because I did a video for the Crimson Vow set, and I'm going to do one for the Kamagawa set as well. And you can get a sense of exactly kind of what you get in these things. They're really cool. They definitely are kind of like a collector's item for sure. But they're really, really nice. And I guess we can mention our giveaway for this. So Pinfinity created for Kamigawa Neon Dynasty a limited edition Okagachi pin set. So they have, I think there's like a regular colored one and there's like a neon colored one. And I think it also comes with like a lanyard or something. So we are doing a giveaway for one of those sets. So if you go over to our Facebook page, and I believe if we haven't pinned
it's the pinned one.
It's the pinned post on our Facebook page. So facebook.com/MTGRocks. You can enter. There's a Gleamio link. You can go ahead and enter the giveaway. There's a few different ways, and then that ends on the 17th.
The day before paper full release. Yeah.
Day before paper release. So that ends there. So you got a few days to go and enter that. A little bit more than about a week to go and enter that. So go ahead and check that out as well. So very, very cool. Very, very cool giveaway. Big thank you to Pinfinity for hooking us up with that and letting us do that. And yeah, awesome product. Very, very cool stuff. Lastly here, I guess one thing we'll wrap up the podcast with is the Q4 2021 earnings report for Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast came out yesterday, and very interesting if you're into the financial stuff. A couple of keynotes from this particular report. 2021 was the biggest year for Wizards of the Coast ever. $1.28 billion in revenue. That is massive. That's up 42% year over year, with the $547 million operating profit, which is 30% up year over year. Huge gains for Wizards, and we kind of can see why there's a lot of stuff they did in 2021.
Now you know why you're not getting more value when you buckle up.
Yeah, right. Now you know why they flooded us with just like release after release after release. Like they just made a ton of stuff and they made a ton of money off of it. They did have a 5-year plan of doubling the revenue overall, and they reached that 2 years ahead of schedule, which is impressive. like, to say that is not a feat of good business sense is an understatement. Like, that's just crazy how, like,
Yeah,
doubling your amount of money made. That's huge.
yeah. Then the next step will tell us a lot here because they've got one of two choices now. They either stick to the 5-year plan, and they, at the end of the next 3 years, they say, pat themselves in the back. Hopefully, the next 3 years will be minimum, but there'll be growth there. Or we could see them just completely rip up this 5-year plan, say, you know what, we achieved it in 2 years. Here's a new goal. It's world domination. And, it makes business sense to go both ways. I would probably prefer to see them stick to a 5-year plan because we know from just how the world can go sometimes overnight, your money can just fall off a cliff. Maybe the community, yes, it's full of whales, but that has its limit. And even they have kind of very tentatively said, listen, don't expect years like this going forward. It's going to be very, very marginal, if any growth at all. So I'd expect them to stick to a 5-year plan. And at the end of the 5 years, they will hopefully still have achieved that goal of doubling the revenue.
Yeah. And I think that's honestly, that's a very big, a very big thing from Wizards, actually. Because this is a report that goes out to their investors, and to potential investors as well. The fact of the matter is that they had this monstrous year of growth in 2021, and then they come and say, expect maybe mid-single digit growth in 2022. The fact that they were very upfront, very transparent, and saying, hey, we're not going to, this massive growth is not sustainable for us. This is very, very much we had a great year. Let's just kind of make sure that we're, moving forward with it and progressing on it, but we're not going to have nearly as big of a growth. Like, that's a very big thing to say to an investor, because usually investors, they want to see growth on growth compounding, right? Like, but it depends on, and I was reading some of the Reddit comments. It really depends on the kind of company that you have, and kind of what you're doing with your stocks, right? So Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro are paying dividends to their shareholders, which is something that not all companies do. So for the fact of the matter is that they, as an investor, the fact that if you can invest in this company and they'll pay down dividends to you, as when the company grows, it makes you feel a little bit better that that your individual stock price is not, shooting through the roof, right? So, like, it's a very cool thing that they're doing, and that this is kind of how they're going about it, and that they are this transparent about this this financial situation, because there's a lot of expectation when you have a company that grows 42% revenue, when you double your revenue in 3 years, and you have a 42% revenue growth from year over year. There's a lot of expectation there, and so I think just being upfront with it now it makes a lot of sense, and I respect their decision to say that.
And I mean, that's with 3 big things in the pipeline as well. We've got the D&D live action movie due out this financial year. The MTG Netflix series is due out this financial year. And they said they're putting more reliance on the kind of gaming and digital gaming space, which to me was further confirmation in a very slight way that, Arena 2.0 or Arena Evolved is in the works, and it is coming, and it will be this be all end all, every format, every card, fix the economy, do everything it can to really push that. Because I looked through the numbers, I listened to the entire call. Anyone can, it's public domain. And nothing was really ever specifically pointed out figures wise about Arena. And I thought it was really interesting that wasn't the case. We put up a piece this week about Arena's economy and some easy ways to fix it, but the lack thereof of those fixes says to me, as well as all this kind of reliance on digital gaming, that something big is happening. And I think it's going to be Arena 2.0.
Yeah, we can hope. We can definitely hope. And one thing that I did see in here as well that was interesting. So, the fact of the matter is that with the tabletop stuff, I think we can pretty much expect a similar product stack going into 2022. We're going to see Secret Lairs. I think those were a big success for the company. And the fact that they can make all this money through the collaboration contracts, for one. We don't know whether it's other brands approaching Wizards or Wizards approaching other brands, which way the money flows in that direction. But at the end of the day, people are buying Secret Lairs. I know, I mean, I bought my first Secret Lair with the Arcane stuff because I was a big fan of Arcane. Like Wizards they're making some very good strategic moves about who they're partnering with, and we haven't seen the Street Fighter Secret Lair come out yet. We haven't seen the Fortnite thing pan out yet. Like those are coming, I think.
I mean, they're
Right?
due this year.
They're due
Apparently,
this.
they're due this year alongside. I think there's a Warhammer one
Yeah, there's a
that's due this
Warhammer
year.
one. I know the
Um,
Lord of the Rings, I think, thing is coming this year. Like, or is that next year? Is that next year?
Yeah.
I think that's next year. Yeah.
It's next year.
Modern Horizons set. It's next year.
Yeah, and then we have like the Baldur's Gate. Like, so there's a lot of like cool little things that Wizards is doing to kind of bring other IPs into the fold, get other people who are non-Magic players interested in Magic and excited about the products that are coming out. And so expect that to be the same. We already know the product roadmap for the main line and supplemental sets over the next year as well. And so don't expect anything massively drastically different on the tabletop front. But I mean, it worked for them, and I think that they realize, and I think a lot of people really like understand that maybe the fact that they did so well with this product stack in the last year, the market's saturated, but it's still a winning model, right? It's still a model for a success for them in this coming year. So expect nothing to change there. And I think, yeah, like you said, the big exciting change that can come this year that maybe would push their growth over mid-single digits would be a push on the digital front, the push on Arena to really become this kind of premier card game experience, especially considering that we had another big major card game come out, Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel come out, and Konami has their various ways of monetizing that game, and generally I think the sentiment around that is that there is a pretty positive sentiment around its free-to-play experience for the most part. So they have that to contend with now. They have Runeterra to contend with now. So there are other competition out there from the digital space, and I think if Wizards they have kind of a foot up on a lot of other competition in that space, but they need to push it more. They need to make sure that they are the premier game to play Magic or to play a card game. If you're playing a digital card game, it's this. So I guess ultimately question on this for you guys, really, what would you guys want to see from them this year? Like, what kind of moves or what kind of products would you be excited for them to put out this year that kind of are in line with their product stack or with their mid, their roadmap for the coming year? What's exciting you?
I guess I'll go first. I wish they could do something to kind of revamp Pioneer. I don't know what that would be necessarily. I don't think I'd want Modern Horizons type set for Pioneer specifically, but just something in general for them to kind of like acknowledge the format again would be really great. I think one way to do that would be, as Niall said, to like have this revamped digital space and put that format back in to players, like attention, like have players look at it again, and I think they would do that with, if they could do a cool like Arena 2.0 thing and just have everything. I think players would kind of give more, they'd acknowledge the format.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, for me, there's nothing they can do on a physical front. I mean, my two things that I want this year is, first and foremost, is the Arena 2.0. It needs a revamp. It needs to include more formats. It needs to be better thought through from an economic standpoint, because Yu-Gi-Oh! Is the one that's, I think, broken. It's the final straw for a lot of players. How in the hell can Konami produce this game where I don't need to spend a single penny to be competitive at the very top level? And yet with MTG, I'm struggling to keep up with each month by month, because when the meta changes, I've got to find these wild cards to build these decks, and I've got to then find the coins to buy the cards. Oh no, wait, you want me to buy gems. That's what it boils down to at the end of the day. So get the more popular formats on Arena. You don't have to sacrifice online for the sake of putting those formats on Arena. You can still keep a few things exclusive to online if you want to, and I'm sure regardless of what happens with Arena, online will still be the preferred method to play for a lot of people. But something needs to change, whether it is a brand new client and a brand new way of playing, or whether it is just a change to what currently exists. It needs to happen. And second of all, I think the big thing about this Netflix show is it needs to be well thought through. It needs to be made for, it needs to hit that kind of vibe that Arcane did, where people who don't know much about League of Legends could watch it and enjoy it, and people that play League of Legends, for a career, watched it and enjoyed it. Like, it needs to hit both sides of the audience. It won't for everyone, of course it won't, but I want as much thought, care, attention, love, whatever, to go into that show as possible. And hopefully then we'll be on to a winner. Because let's face it, the Wizards of the Coast, from a Magic perspective, the money they've made on Magic has been done through paper and a singular digital product. Like, how much more could they do if they branched it out and it became the franchise that it's capable of being? Just, I look back to the War of the Spark trailer that they put on YouTube that absolutely blew up, and that thing went viral for people that didn't know what Magic was. It got a lot of people back into Magic alone, just this incredibly well thought through and well produced CGI trailer. So if you think what you can do with that on YouTube, just think what you can do with an episodic, even short term, limited run Netflix series. You could do massive things with the game.
Yeah, I agree. I'm in the same boat. I guess with both of you, honestly. Like, I think that the Magic Netflix show has a high bar. There's no way around it, right? The fact is that Arcane set the bar to astronomical heights, and no one, at least no animated show since, at least, and I've heard people say this, and I tend to agree with them, since Avatar: Last Airbender, has really had an impact on just animation and storytelling and just the general pop culture audience, I think, quite as much as Arcane has. And so whether or not Wizards wants to measure this up to that standard or to that bar, they could, I mean, maybe, but they have a bar to meet to cater to the masses, to get more people involved in it. And I think that's what they're trying to go for. And then, yeah, the Arena 2.0. So listening to some of the developer weekly MTGs and stuff like that, I don't blame them for anything. I think that they're strapped for time and production. I think that their crew is probably not as big as they need it to be to really put things into, into real efficient production, if you will. I hope that part of this revenue and this money that Wizards made over the last year gets afforded to the MTG Arena development team to really put together an MTG Arena 2.0 to expedite the timeline of adding, at the very bare minimum, Pioneer, maybe a multiplayer experience into the game. Because realistically, while Arena has the benefit of having multiple formats you can play, that's not going to always be the case. And I know that, like, Runeterra and Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel are already have things in the works to add more formats or more event types to their client, that if nothing is done with Arena, they're just going to get run over, and I don't want to see that happen. So Arena 2.0, a major economy revamp, I think, for me, is the biggest thing. And I've written, I think I'll mention this, I wrote an article about the economy and what Wizards can do to really fix that economy, to really make it player centric, to make it not as beneficial to the whales out there. And there's a lot of examples and a lot of inspiration that they can draw from. And I think they need to get over the, we're doing it our way and this way, and this is the best way to do it kind of thing, because it's not working. It's not working. I mean, it's working, but it's not going to continue to work for the next 5 years. It's something that, and especially if you add something like Pioneer, where the card pool, injecting a massive card pool into the game just gets, how are people going to acquire cards? It's going to be impossible. Like, you have to pick one format, one deck, and then still drop $500 to acquire that deck, most likely. Like, it's going to be something it needs to be looked at immensely. And I imagine that, right? Like, imagine Arena's working now, and Arena's doing probably pretty good numbers right now. Imagine what you would do if you fixed the economy and made it so that players could spend money and get what they wanted and feel good about it, right? That's the balance you have to kind of strike. But then also you get more player numbers for free-to-play players coming back. You get more people engaged, and you have more opportunity for players to spend money. Like, there's so much benefit to making a player-centric economy that I can't say enough about it, right? I could ramble on this for another 20 minutes, but
I mean, that would make me come back. I uninstalled because I couldn't keep up with it. I just decided to focus on paper Magic. But if they actually did revamp it, something akin to like Legends of Runeterra, because I could play that for free, but like it's just
yeah,
free.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd come back.
Yeah, I mean, and I mean, I don't know if you've spent any money on the game, but like for me, I play Runeterra on a casual basis. Like, every so often, I'll come back to it, play it for an hour or two. But when I come back, I want to know what's good. I want to know what's kind of like the top competitive ladder deck at the time. So I go and look it up, and then I buy the wild cards to make the deck, and I don't have to spend that much money, but I'm still spending money on the game because it's accessible to me. It doesn't cost me an arm and a leg to chance at buying, or creating a deck. I can make the deck that I want to play and feel happy playing it. And you know what? They've got my money. Yeah. That simple, right? So, like, and I think that that's the kind of a bar that, again, Riot is setting, that I think Wizards hopefully can draw some inspiration from and approach, and still make it, a player-centric economy, but also still appease the board. Like, I know they need to appease the board members and the execs and all that stuff with this, but I think that there's a real case to be made for a player-centric economy that can still make a lot of money for them. So cool. I think that is all the topics that we have for the day. Any last words, any last things you guys want to really quickly spitball?
Nope.
Big stuff. I think going forward, guys, if you guys are watching this, one thing we want to do maybe in the future is have kind of like a Q&A stuff, like send us some questions and we'll talk about them, sort of deal. So we'll figure out a good way to do that. Maybe DM or send a Facebook message to the MTGRocks Facebook page, or if you're a Twitter follower, you can DM us on Twitter, I believe, as well. And we can pull some questions from there for the next podcast and talk about those and answer those. So cool. Thank you guys so much for watching. You guys, make sure that you are subbed to the channel, drop a like on the video, comment down below. What are you excited for Kamigawa and Dynasty? What's your favorite cards from the set? And going forward, what are you excited to play with? And tomorrow if you're on Arena, or next week if you're in paper. But thank you guys so much for watching. We will see you guys in the next podcast. See you later.